An American who spent 5 years in a Cuban prison says President Obama's upcoming trip to Cuba is a courageous move. Alan Gross was a government contractor who was arrested for delivering internet communications equipment to Cuban Jews. He was freed in late 2014. Our own Gary Lane recently sat down with Gross to discuss his imprisonment and how it helped to transform U.S.-Cuba relations.
And after years in prison, we are overjoyed that Alan Gross is back where he belongs. Welcome home, Alan. We're glad you're here.
The time that you were released, right around that time is when President Obama announced restoration of diplomatic relations.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
Well, it wasn't right around that time. It was exactly on the same day. On December 17th, 2014, 1,481 days after I was arrested, at least one plane took off from the United States with the 3 remaining Cuban intelligence agents, and our plane that had landed, Air Force One alternative, that had landed at a Cuban airstrip to take me home, was permitted to take off only after they had confirmation that their people were returned. But finally, the president had the political strength to make the hard decision. And it was a historic decision in establishing a new policy, U.S.-Cuba policy.
Do you think, Alan, we'd have that new policy had you not been released if you were still in prison?
Would I have been released if we didn't have the new policy? Absolutely not. They go hand in hand. So in that context, I was an involuntary catalyst in the process of establishing a new foundation for a relationship with our neighbor.
And what do you think of that new foundation? Because you sat in a prison cell for 5 years. Is it the right course?
Well, absolutely. If we had had diplomatic relations 55 years ago, 50 years ago, 45 years ago, 6 years ago, I might not have had to forfeit 5 years of my life. The whole idea of constructive engagement helps to avoid circumstances like this. And people who are critical of the process that we've recently gone through really need to take a look at that.
And the president's preparing to go to Cuba?
Yes, he is.
Do you think that's a good thing? What are your thoughts?
I'm not surprised that he wanted to go. I think he views Cuba as an important part of his legacy. And I think it is. After 55 years of a failed U.S. policy, he's come up with some new direction that has much greater potential. I know that he'll meet with President Raul Castro. I hope that he does not meet with former President Fidel Castro. And I think what's more important is for the president, the two presidents, to come to some form of understanding about human rights. You know, the economy, the Cubans are going to have to work out. If they don't improve, and their economy is in a shambles. It's essentially disintegrating because they don't produce.
For more of Gary's interview and to hear how 5 years in prison affected Gross's Jewish faith, look for the Global Lane blog at cbnnews.com.